Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Film Nerd Podcast. This is episode 12. I'm Vince, and tonight I'm joined by a couple guests. For the first time, I have two guests instead of one. I have Daniel Middleton, who is my cousin, and Mikey Bair, childhood friend of both of ours, here to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League. How you doing, guys?
Pretty good. Not
Good.
too bad.
Doing all right. How about yourself, Vincent?
Oh, like we were just talking before we started here, just plugging along one day at a time.
Popping kids out one after another, right?
one too many, exactly. So before we get into the main discussion here, because we're going to talk about, I do want to touch on Batman versus Superman and Man of Steel for a little bit, but I was going to ask you guys just a couple quick questions, I've asked all the guests that I've had on so far this year. So I guess I'll go Mikey and then I'll go Daniel. Mikey, so over the last year, how's your movie going experience been? Have you been able to make it to a movie theater? Have you mostly just done streaming? How have things been for you since March of 2020?
Well, a lot of streaming. We have not made it to a theater for like a new theatrical release.
Since the pandemic started?
Since the pandemic, still haven't gone, but my wife did gift us with a Valentine's Day gift to see, what did we see? Jurassic Park. We saw that in theaters. She rented out the whole...
That'd be sweet, because we were too young to see that in the big screen. That'd be sweet.
It was crazy. She rented out the whole theater just for the two of us, and it's actually pretty affordable, believe it or not.
I have a buddy who I know did that with his family, and he said it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. It was incredible. I mean, like I've seen that movie 100 times, but
never on the big screen.
It like brought me back to the very first time when I saw it, like seeing it on theaters and like feeling the vibrations from like the T-Rex. It was terrifying. It was actually terrifying. It was crazy. So I highly recommend that if you can get a couple guys together, rent out a theater and see an old flick.
Where'd you do that at? Which theater?
We did that at Celebration.
Okay, the one in Lansing?
In Kalamazoo.
Oh, that's right. You're down in Kalamazoo. Duh, we were just talking about that. I'm an idiot. Yeah. Ignore me.
That was awesome. Lots of streaming besides that. We bought a movie projector, just a budget projector. I think I was telling you about that before.
Yeah. We were texting about that, I remember at one point.
Yeah. So we did some like outdoor movies with a couple people, and we watched Mulan the night it came out. And that was okay.
That's a cool experience though.
It was a cool experience.
Get the projector,
maybe a little better, but it was a cool experience.
Yeah, my brother got me a budget projector for Christmas last year, and it's a pretty solid budget projector. And we did some summer movies on my back deck last summer, and that was like you said, a fun experience to do it outside. I'm glad it's getting nice again, because going to be able to start that up again here soon once you got a little warmer weather.
For sure.
Definitely.
So what's your before I ask Daniel the same questions, what would have been your kind of go-to streaming services? What have been your default if you had to pick one or two?
I guess I'd probably say Netflix has been a constant. Lots of good shows that we like on there. Hulu's been pretty good for us lately. We tend to watch like a Bob's Burgers before bed or something. We've been watching Seinfeld.
Oh yeah.
We've actually never watched Seinfeld all the way through. So
my wife had never seen it like other than bits and pieces. So we watched it all straight through last year. Yeah.
That's been fun. Besides that, I'd say Disney Plus has been pretty awesome for us. Obviously Mandalorian's pretty amazing. WandaVision was fun. And then now we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so they gotta up their back catalog is what they're known for, and I think that was the initial like nostalgia bait. Everyone wanted to buy it because people don't really buy home physical media anymore, so just that convenience of paying for Disney Plus and you got everything in their back catalog. But then after a while it's like, okay, let's get something new, get some new stuff, some new content. So now if they're starting to finally roll out some new stuff, I think they'll start to gain a little bit more traction. But have you done HBO Max? I know Daniel, you borrowed my HBO Max account to watch the movie that we're going to talk about, but I love HBO Max.
Yeah, HBO Max, it's pretty amazing. We tend to just kind of forget about it, and then like when we go into it, we're like, oh, this is crazy, we should watch this more.
They have so much stuff.
They might have the best selection of old movies.
I was scrolling through all the documentaries, and there's an unlimited amount of documentaries, so like, you know, biographies and different things like that. And I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And it's just like, I mean, everything from, you know, Olympics to NFL, a lot of sports type stuff, and then just things about everyday life, politics, you know, some of these scandals that are going on throughout the country. It's there's a wide variety of things out there on.
They have a lot of
HBO
stuff.
Max.
Well, and I also, speaking of like politically correct, I also liked HBO Max came out because Disney Plus, there was some controversy of them like self-censoring some of their old content that was deemed like like racially insensitive in the modern age.
Yeah.
And HBO Max came out and said, we're not doing that. People can decide for themselves what they want to see. We're not going to alter, you know, the original version of any of these movies. If you don't like it, don't watch it. So I was kind of, you know, very happy that they came out and made that statement, because I think it's total BS.
I agree.
Like, what do you know, from a 1940s, 1950s, or even earlier, what do you expect? I mean, it's a time capsule. It's a time capsule. I mean,
I'm definitely
there's a lot of horrible people. There's horrible people now, and there's horrible people back then. But
I'm definitely an advocate for like disclaimers before those things.
Oh yeah,
I think canceling them and just getting rid of them is not going to help the cause. But like,
no,
I always remember, I think it was like the Tom and Jerry cartoons when those came out on DVD. They had Whoopi Goldberg in the beginning talk about it. She says, now these are old. There's things in this that are not okay anymore.
Oh yeah.
But we're trying to preserve it for what it was. And like, she talked to the audience about it, and it was perfect.
See, yeah, I think that's a good thing to do, but just flat out, censoring and like cutting things out, and not addressing, like, you shouldn't cut it out at all. You shouldn't cut it out, period. Right. But I think it is important that if you kind of give some context to that time period, and you know that at the time it was, while it's not okay now, at the time people didn't care, or it was just far more widely accepted, some of the things they said and did. So but anyway, going down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I have really enjoyed HBO Max. I'm also excited that they're doing the I know it kind of also stirred a little bit of controversy, the same day release, theater, HBO Max, you know, streaming same day as it's released in the theater. People were kind of upset about that, worried it was going to be the end of you know, the theatrical experience. I don't think that's good. That's true. I think, you know, at the end of the day, I want to go see Dune later this year on the big screen. You know, I would love to go see Godzilla versus Kong on the big screen, but as we were just talking about before the podcast started, I now have baby number 2 just arrived, so I don't really have the option to drive, you know, 40 minutes round trip to get to the closest, you know, theater that I enjoy going to. So for that, it is nice. But Daniel, how about you, man? I know that you and I go to a lot of movies, and I know that you definitely enjoy the theatrical experience. Have you managed to go to one in the last year?
You know, so obviously, like you guys both know, I'm currently in dental school at Detroit Mercy, so I don't really have a lot of free time to enjoy that kind of stuff. And usually, the free time I do enjoy, I like, you know, being a little more active. Not that I don't enjoy doing movies, but you know, whether it's like, you know, being outside and golfing and playing sports, hunting, fishing, you know, visiting with friends, doing that kind of stuff. So haven't had a lot of time in that aspect, but also COVID has limited me, obviously, from going, you know, in person to these movies and stuff like that. So honestly, the last time I've seen a theatrical release of a movie, it's been I mean, over a year. It's been probably a year and a half or so. So it's been a little while. But I do enjoy that experience. Like Mikey was talking about seeing Jurassic Park, and you know, we all love those original, you know, iconic movies and stuff like that. And I couldn't imagine what it would have been like to see that Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know, come through.
Well, and that's what a lot of these, the drive, I saw the drive-in theaters were doing it, you know, because there was a long stretch where, you know, we all live in Michigan. There's a long stretch in Michigan where, you know, theaters were closed, indoor theaters were closed completely. And the only thing operating was, I mean, we only have like 9 to 12 drive-ins in the entire state. Unfortunately, there's none in the Lansing area, which really sucks, because I would have loved to have gone to one. The closest one to me is down 69 in Coldwater, the Capri drive-in in Coldwater. I would have liked to have gone, but it was just, I never got a chance to. But I saw a lot of them were showing classic movies, because all the new movies kept getting delayed. They kept getting pushed to later in the year, or to the very next year, 2 years ahead. So that's all they could show was a lot of, you know, either small budget films that didn't have the money to push the release, or classics, all these old movies. So and I know now that some of the theaters, the chains, are all back open again. Caroline, my wife Caroline, and I did manage to go to see a movie in January and then one in February together. And while they do have some new movies now, it's not like a year and a half ago you could walk in and everything was new. Now about half the marquee is old stuff, old movies, classics that they're showing, which is kind of cool. I would love to go see like Jurassic Park and on the big screen would be a lot of fun.
It's pretty sad when we were walking in the theater just seeing like all of these movies that were supposed to come out.
Yeah,
posters on the side. It's just like a graveyard in there.
Yeah, I believe it.
I know. Yeah, I'm excited to see some of the new movies that got pushed finally coming out later this year. There was, obviously some good things that came out last year, but a lot of stuff got pushed. So hopefully, fingers crossed, things will open up a little bit more later this year, and we'll be able to go see more stuff. But so before we move on to our main discussion here, how about you, Daniel? What's been your in quarantine here since you haven't made it to a movie? Have you had your go-to streaming service? What have been your favorites?
So I just have the Netflix account, but like you said, I was able to use and borrow your HBO Max to watch the movie we're going to discuss.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I've been able to use Hulu a little bit. I've used Disney Plus a little bit here and there. So honestly, a lot of those main streaming services I've used. Probably the one that I go to the most is Hulu.
They're great for TV shows.
TV shows. Been watching Seinfeld, kind of like you and Mike were talking about. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I'm just rewatching
years ago. Dude, I absolutely love that show. It's crazy. I really, in this climate, I don't understand how it's able to continue making shows based on the things that it talks about.
It's so satirical that they're able to get away with.
They openly acknowledge in the show. That's a show that I would love to do an entire episode just talking about, because I had never seen it before, and during quarantine last year I'm like, I'm gonna finally. I had people tell me for years, you're gonna like the show, you should watch the show, you would love it, especially one of my buddies in college, it's one of his favorite shows, and he told me I have to watch it. And finally in quarantine last year, like April, I said, screw it, I'm stuck at home with a baby, so I'm like, I'm just going to start watching this as much as I can. I watched all 13 seasons in like a month. I was just like every day knocking episodes out. Now I'm just kind of casually rewatching it.
Dude, it's wild. It's hilarious. Man. It is wild.
But like Mikey was saying, they some of the stuff they do in the early seasons they wouldn't be able to get away with now. But the reason they ever got away with it in the first place is, one, it's not on a major network. FX, or now it's FXX is its alternate network it's on, because it's a premium channel. You're not getting the average TV watcher watching it. It's people who are paying for that network and know that FX has a certain standard, certain type of maybe more abrasive TV, maybe less caring about offending. Which, speaking of which, FX in the last 4 or 5 years just started using the F word. There's a whole story. There's a whole news story on that, how they snuck it in slowly to kind of make it okay with their advertisers. Because what people don't know is you can actually say anything you want on television. There's a common misconception that people think the FCC or whatever controls what you can say on TV, and that's not true. The networks control what they say on their own network based on their advertisers. If their advertisers will not sponsor their show, not have commercials because they don't like the content, they're going to lose money. So that's why the major networks, are pretty limited on what they show and what they say. Whereas something like FX or Comedy Central has always said the F word after dark, late at night, but their advertisers know what to expect. FX just now in the last few years has snuck it into their major shows like any time of the day. But It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is also, like Mikey said, been satirical, and they openly acknowledge within the show that all the characters are pieces of shit. It's like the original tagline of the show was Seinfeld on crack, because it's like a show about nothing. It's a group of friends, and they're all just debased, abhorrent individuals. Even worse than Seinfeld.
It's very self-aware.
So I was able to watch that, and then also you've been tripping me for a while about watching Breaking Bad, so I was able to finally finish that.
Finally watched it,
dude. Yeah,
last year I finished
show. It. Yeah, it was. Do
you see this right? Well, let's see if I can do it right there. Well, right. That's the Breaking Bad box set right there.
Is it? Yeah. So I was able to finish that, and obviously, I really enjoyed it. But so the thing is, for me, when it comes to like TV shows and stuff, I almost enjoy watching TV shows for like just more of a relaxing, obviously entertaining, but just kind of like a nonchalant, type atmosphere. And Breaking Bad was so dark at some points and so intense that I was just like, it was a little overwhelming at some point. You know, I wanted to watch it, but it was just like I wasn't feeling like, you know, stress relieved or, you know, just relaxed. I was just
it's not a casual. It's you're emotionally invested in that show, and that's why it's so great. The greatest thing that Vince Gilligan ever did with that show is he set out to make a character that in the beginning you empathize for, and then turn him into the villain by the end, and still make you empathize with him. It's genius. It is absolutely genius. I think it's one of the greatest character studies in movies, TV show ever. Walter White, his turn.
Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. I still need to see El Camino. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, it's great.
Need to see that.
It's great. And my wife and I finally binged Better Call Saul last year in quarantine. The final season's coming out next year.
How was that?
Great. It's great. It's a lot different. It's a lot different.
I've heard some people like that more than Breaking Bad.
It's different. It's different. It's far more. It is far less. There's still violence. There's still suspense. There's still tension in it, but it's far more focused on really engaging dialogue and characters than it is the crime stuff, because you got to also think about the premise. You have Saul Goodman, who's the lawyer. It's just exploring how he became this dirty lawyer. Right. So naturally it's going to be a lot less of the, you know, gritty crime drug stuff that was happening in Breaking Bad. Because, you know, when Breaking Bad starts, where Saul he's in a good place for him. So you know that there's going to be some iffy stuff, but it's not going to be nearly as crazy as Breaking Bad. It's far more about these characters, you know, learning about these characters, their conversations, their relationships, and then how they kind of change. And they're navigating the world of law, you know, the criminal world through the view of, you know, a courtroom. So it's a different show, but it's the same. It's still Vince Gilligan who created and did most of the writing and directing for Breaking Bad. Still same guy, same composer, same guy did the score, same cinematographer. A lot of the same people came back. So it looks and feels like it's in the same universe. It's great.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's great. Well, all right, guys, kind of a long-winded opening conversation, but that's okay. It's all good stuff. So if you guys are ready, we can move on here. We're going to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League, the #Snyder Cut, which I think I saw on social media for literally the last 4 years. Before we get into the Snyder Cut, I do just want to kind of touch on Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman for just a second. Then at the very end, after we're done talking about Justice League, we'll kind of talk about the DC extended universe overall. So what are your guys' thoughts on, I don't know when the last time you guys watched Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, or the original theatrical cut of Justice League? For me personally, I just rewatched Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. Man of Steel, I remembered more favorably than when I watched it this time. I didn't like it quite as much on rewatch as I remembered. I still enjoyed it. I still enjoy it more than most people do. A lot of people hate it and were super critical of it when it came out. There's things that I do like about it, but I do think there's things that you can be critical of. And then Batman versus Superman, I enjoyed a little bit more, but I am openly aware of, you know, and I can appreciate and understand the criticisms for that film as well. But I still enjoy. I think I enjoy them both than most people. What's that?
I'm just ramping up here, waiting to.
Well, you can go ahead and start off. What do you got?
Well, just first of all, Man of Steel, that's my favorite of the whole DC extended universe.
It's Daniel, your favorite, is it?
Same.
Yeah, I know you really like it too, Daniel.
It's just, I don't know. It finally showed what Superman could do. I don't know. It really, like, I don't know how to say this. It showed what the comics, I'm sorry, I'm just completely demolishing what I'm trying to say here.
Oh, you're good.
It completely exemplified everything, every single power, every single strength, his emotions, everything he has in the comics, he shows in that movie. I know the dialogue is a little choppy in that movie and all
that was one thing I was a little bit more critical of this time rewatching it.
Lois Lane, I hate Lois Lane in that movie. I think Amy Adams,
which is crazy because Amy Adams is a terrific actress.
She is. I think she's actually terrible in every DC movie she's in, and I don't know. She tends
to be one of the common complaints about these movies is Lois Lane.
It's just so off for her character. Like, there's one scene in Man of Steel where she's like, "Are you guys done measuring dicks?" And like that scene, it's so awkward in that movie, but
Yeah.
that's how her character is in the comics, like constantly. She's like snarky and like kind of goofy and sarcastic. And Amy Adams just did not fill that role at all, personally.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of that could be attributed to maybe some of the writing and direction from Snyder.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't his focus, behind the scenes. He didn't care as much about the portrayal of Lois Lane as he did Superman, Kal-El,
Yeah, but I mean, not to get too held up on her overall. Man of Steel, I love that movie. Batman vs Superman, humongous disappointment. I feel like they just set up so much in Man of Steel for it, and then he kind of chose a completely different route for it. I think Lex Luthor was absolutely just garbage.
Jesse Eisenberg on rewatch was unbearable. He was my biggest problem with the movie on rewatch. Every scene I'm like, what are you doing? It seems like he's trying to do some cross between what Heath Ledger did with the Joker and then like
I just don't even know what it is. I've never seen anything like that in a movie.
It's like really weird and goofy, but then also maybe some of his performance from Social Network as Mark Zuckerberg. I see some of that in that performance too.
Yeah, he doesn't really. I don't think he can act outside of that sort of weird, quirky character. He's basically that same guy in every movie.
But I think in Social Network he's great. I mean, he's terrific as Mark Zuckerberg. Totally. But I think the problem is I don't know. Again, I don't know how Snyder was directing him from behind the scenes, but I'm wondering if part of it was maybe he gave him a lot of freedom to kind of make his own version of Lex Luthor, and it ends up just being even goofier than what you would imagine a comic book villain should be. It's like too much of a caricature. Like it's just he's, especially with the tone Snyder's going for, because that is something I do want to talk about, especially when we get to Justice League here. Is Snyder has a very specific tone and kind of look and feel for all of these movies that Warner Brothers has kind of backtracked on in some of the other movies, which we can talk about a little bit later. But that is also one of the biggest problems I think with his Lex Luthor is it doesn't fit the tone. It's too goofy. It's too silly. Weird.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't fit the tone of a typical Lex Luthor from the old movies or from the comic books anyway. It's just
Lex is a completely different new thing. Doesn't make any sense.
Which is fine if he wants to do something new, but it doesn't work. It just doesn't.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. Like the Flash, totally different from the comics, but I'm actually a big fan of how Ezra Miller portrayed the Flash.
Yes.
But we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually like Batman vs Superman a little bit more than Man of Steel, and I would love it even more if Eisenberg was something different and cut out, because there are some genuinely great like action scenes. I really like Ben Affleck as Batman, Jeremy Irons as Alfred. I
absolutely love Ben Affleck as Batman.
I think he's I don't think he older really Batman
got to like show his full potential as that character.
I know the solo film that got ended up getting discarded. He was supposed to direct it.
I was trying to explain to Daniel before, like, Batman vs Superman is this roller coaster where there's moments where you're just like, oh shit, that's incredible. Those costumes are crazy. This shot is crazy. And then like at the snap of a finger, Zack Snyder will do something so stupid. And you're like, oh,
you're like, what is going on? And
what is this?
I'm almost wondering if part of it isn't his fault. I still am convinced the studio was so desperately trying to catch up way too quickly to what Disney and Marvel were doing with the MCU, but I don't think they stopped to think that the MCU took years. I mean, literally more than a decade to kind of let things breathe and gestate and come to a head after 20 something films. Whereas it was like they tried to create all of this in 2 movies. I mean, they set up the entire Justice League after into the second movie.
Yep.
So I think that's part of the problem. I think you can give some of the blame to him, but maybe some of the blame to the studio behind the scenes, which again, we'll get into the Justice League in a little bit here, that literally the studio is what caused the failure of the theatrical cut of that. But I'm also convinced that was some of the issues with Batman versus Superman.
Right. I don't think we can end this BVS convo without talking about the ultimate Martha scene.
Oh gosh.
So that scene, I remember when I saw it in theaters, I hadn't seen the discourse online about it yet. And I remember when I saw it on initial watch, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, It made sense to me. I'm not as versed in the comics as you guys are. I haven't read really any comics on Superman. I've read a few on Batman, but not much. It didn't even hit me that their mothers had the same name in the comics. I wasn't even thinking about it. So for me, on my first watch in the theater, I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I felt like the moment, maybe the emotional switch from Batman was a little bit too quick to make sense. I felt like they didn't lead up to it enough. There wasn't enough. I felt like it was too abrupt. I feel like the idea makes sense and it's not a bad idea, but the execution is way too abrupt. Like that switch, that flip, it's kind of comical.
A kryptonite spear at his throat, ready to murder him,
and then boom.
And then he's like, "Wait a minute, hey, your mom's name is Martha too. We should be buds."
And again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. I just think the execution is kind of silly. It does come off a little silly.
I think my biggest thing is that Snyder, like to this day, he defends that to the end. Like they literally interviewed him last week, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I love that scene. It's great." And then my fans love it too. And it's
I did, like I said, just last week I just rewatched it, and I had, all the discourse surrounding that scene in my mind. I'm like, okay, it's coming. Here it comes. How, like, from memory, I was like, did I like it more or less? And then I, watching the scene with fresh eyes and kind of fresh perspective, I was like, it's okay. It's a little goofy, but I don't hate the idea. I don't know. Some people really like, it's their like main talking point about the movie. And I don't understand that, because it's I watched the Ultimate Edition. I don't know which one you guys watch. I've watched the 3-hour edition.
I've seen that version.
That's the only version I've watched the last 2 or 3 times I've watched it. And 3 hours, and you're going to talk about that one scene. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think just talking about that one moment, I don't know, for me it doesn't make or break the film. It is a point of criticism, but it doesn't make or break the movie for me, at least.
It's just such a big turning point for like half of a movie of buildup of them fighting. That, I don't know. It doesn't make or break the movie for me at all, but it's just one of those things that adds to other crap Snyder threw in there.
Yeah. So, and I do agree with you that the buildup to that moment, it seems very rushed.
Yeah.
You've built up this fight between Batman versus Superman. And again, I think this is the studio's fault, because they seem to shove aside the Batman versus Superman aspect for the big climax of the Justice League coming together. And it's like, why hold on? You could set it up in the credits, or maybe tease a few things, but they literally spend the final act of the movie, the final half an hour, 45 minutes, it's Justice League. It's like, wasn't this supposed to be Batman versus Superman? So and that to me is another big criticism with the movie, is they get away from that. It doesn't seem to end up being the focus by the end.
Right.
But anyway, anything else on Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman? Otherwise, we can jump into the main movie of discussion here.
I mean, I enjoyed Man of Steel. Like, I agree with Mikey that movie for me was the best of the DC movies so far, the extended universe. Coming fresh off of the Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan, I know, had his hands in Man of Steel some. I think he is an executive director of some sort.
Him and his wife executive produced Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and Justice League.
And so I think coming off of the Dark Knight trilogy, Man of Steel still had that dark tone and like a realistic aspect.
Oh, absolutely.
Of those movies. But I was discussing this with Mikey briefly beforehand. It's hard for me, because the Dark Knight trilogy was such a phenomenal set of movies that it's part of the DC universe. Obviously, it's not part of this extended universe. It was part of the whole DC movies. It's hard not to compare these movies to those, regarding just the soundtrack, that way the actors are portrayed. And I just really enjoyed the way Christopher Nolan put those movies together. Christian Bale, how he played Ben, Bruce Wayne and Batman and stuff. So it's very hard for me to get away from those. I have been able to do it because I think Man of Steel did such a good job of setting up that particular Superman, like Mikey was talking about, really brought the comic book aspect of Superman to the screen. The old Superman movies from like 1970s and stuff, Superman 1, 2, and 3. were good. But it was kind of a portrayal of that era and stuff.
I've never seen them.
Yeah, well,
I've never seen
too.
I've never seen them. I know I gotta watch them. They're on HBO Max. I gotta watch them.
Yeah,
the whole
watch for sure.
The whole Superman in tights thing, that was just kind of that costume of that time frame. I mean, you look at the original Batman TV show, and I believe they wore, kind of like tights and like
it was super goofy.
So what they did from the original Superman into that Man of Steel kind of like came out with like almost like a combat suit type thing. No more tight. I think that was very neat from that aspect. But yeah, I really did enjoy Man of Steel. Then Batman versus Superman. Yeah, there was a lot of parts where like it was like leading up to something very good, and then just like Mikey said, time and time again, just a letdown. A lot of potential and then a letdown. So yeah, I was hoping for something a little bit better to branch off of Man of Steel, but I don't know.
So before we move on, I just have one more thing I want to say. You guys like Man of Steel a lot more than I do. I enjoy it. I'm not as caught up in Superman. It sounds like you guys have more of a connection with Superman than I did growing up. I never saw any of the Superman movies. I never watched the shows, didn't read any of the comics. So I literally have zero connection no emotional connection, no nostalgia for him going into it. I just wanted a good movie. And there's a lot of elements of Man of Steel that I enjoy. My biggest problem is the script and the presentation and the structure of that movie. To me, it's kind of a mess, Man of Steel. The first act feels like they try to do way too much. I feel like Man of Steel, and again, I don't even think it's Zack Snyder's fault. I still am convinced it's the studio. I feel like Man of Steel could have been 2 movies. It really could have. There's a lot of setup of the characters, both families, his family on Krypton, his family in the United States. And the first 45 minutes, they have so much of that setup jammed together. And then the flashbacks to when he's a kid and jumping back and forth. It's very messy.
Choppy. It's
choppy. Very messy structure. And again, the elements of there's a lot of the elements I like. Michael Shannon as Zod, I think is great. I think that's one of his best performances. I like Henry Cavill.
He's the best villain in the DC universe by far.
I think he's great, and I like his motivations. I like Russell Crowe as Jor-El, right? Isn't it Jor-El is his father? I like Russell Crowe. I even like what's his dad's name that plays Jonathan Kent? It's oh my god, famous actor. Oh my gosh. I like him. I know I can't think of his name. I like him too. Hans, I think it's one of Hans Zimmer's best scores. I think it would put it up there with some of his best.
I was just going to say the score is unbelievable, and it carries over from
the themes.
The
themes.
The Kevin Costner was the actor thinking of.
Kevin Costner. I think he's great too.
He says some weird things to
there's
Clark,
some goofy lines. There are some
Clark, you need to hide and not save people. Huh?
It's the ideas and the elements I like, and then like that, the execution, the actual dialogue, the actual structure, and how it's presented just to me is a bit messy. But I do like the movie. I own it, and I've watched it 3 or 4 times now, and it is a lot of fun. The final half of the movie is all climax, which some people would, it could be a little mind numbing after a while, that it's literally like over an hour of climax. I mean, it just goes on. And that's why to me, it feels like 2 distinct movies, because the second half feels far more smooth and flows better than the first half. The first half is like so many things chopped up into that initial 45 minutes, and then it flows after that. But I mean, those are my thoughts on the movie, but I do enjoy it overall. I just have some criticisms with it.
One last thing I wanted to add, and I know Mike and I have talked about this in the past, but these characters for DC, and I'm not saying the Marvel Cinematic Universe, those characters aren't larger than life, but these characters from the DC universe, I think it's like you've talked about, placing some of the blame on the studio and on Snyder, just a lot of different elements that go into it. But and again, this is my own opinion, but bringing these characters to life on the big screen, gods among men, it's a tough, it's a challenge. I mean, it's a tough challenge and stuff like that. I mean, it is. So it's like, I mean, these guys are trying to do their best. And I'm not saying they did great by any means, but everyone has their own opinion about what these characters should be like and represent. So I just think it's challenging.
And one of my absolute favorite aspects of Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, there's a thread that is continued between both films, is the fallout of him and Zod and what it creates for real people. I love that, because that was a complaint. I remember when Man of Steel first came out, that was a complaint when that movie, before Batman was sitting there, like, so they just destroy all this stuff and what happens? And then like they literally answer that question at the beginning of the next film. Like, yeah, millions of people died. Like even Batman, Bruce Wayne, I mean, his building, Wayne Enterprise was destroyed. Like that was one of my favorite aspects, that theme of these larger than life superheroes and they explore that in the MCU. That ends up getting explored, in some of the films in the MCU. And that's one of my favorite things, because that's so much more grounded. That's like a theme and an idea. Because you watch some of these films and that's going to be always on your mind. They're destroying all these buildings. It's like what's happened. They're supposed to be heroes, but they're literally killing everyone because the buildings are falling down. So that is one of my favorite parts about these movies. And another complaint that kind of follows that is people are like, it's too serious, it's too dark. It's like, then go watch the MCU. I mean, to me, like that has all the comedic quips and all the silliness. I like the serious tone, and I know that that was a big complaint, is it's not like the old Superman. It's not as lighthearted and fun. Like, well, I don't know. I kind of like the darker and more serious tone and themes. But anyway,
okay,
totally agree with that. I feel like they missed it a little bit in Batman vs Superman, as far as like Superman feeling repercussions from letting millions of people die. Like when I saw Man of Steel, I was excited for them to explore that. And like, I feel like they even had moments where he was like looking around, seeing what he caused.
Well, like in Batman versus Superman. Well, like in Batman versus Superman, when he is the cause of the courthouse being destroyed. But I feel like they don't really linger on it. It's not allowed to kind of that idea to play out a little bit more.
I was like a huge defender of that after Man of Steel, and everyone's like, this isn't Superman. I was like, just hold on. They're gonna dive into his psyche on this, and like this is gonna be his learning factor right here, and this is gonna make him the Superman that we know and love, where he's trying to save every single life. But they kind of didn't do that.
And again, I still am convinced it's the studio forcing Snyder, like, we got to set up this universe. So there's only I feel like there's only so much he could do in Batman vs Superman. That's why that movie is kind of a mess.
They were playing catch up for too long, and it's
absolutely. They should have taken their time, and that's what we're going to get into next year. And I think they're going to start to realize now that they might finally have something. They screwed up for almost 10 years, but now it seems like they're finally getting the ball rolling with some different ideas. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the main discussion for the evening. So Zack Snyder's Justice League. We didn't really talk a ton of spoilers for Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman. Obviously, if you've been listening, I'm hoping you've already seen those films. We're definitely going to talk spoilers for Zack Snyder's Justice League. And even though this film came out in 2017, I promise you it is 2 hours longer. There are certainly a lot of new things that were not in the original theatrical cut. So be prepared for some spoilers. So if you do not know, Zack Snyder's Justice League is an immediate response to the 2017 Joss Whedon, so it's been labeled the Joss Whedon Justice League from 2017. Received a lot of criticism, was kind of considered a box office bomb, not really well received critically. The thing that came out immediately after the poor release was kind of what was going on behind the scenes. So Zack Snyder, tragically, his daughter committed suicide nearing the end of production, before post-production began. He actually didn't even finish filming. He had filmed most of the film. Most of the filming had completed, but post-production had not even begun. And so what the studio did was they brought in Joss Whedon, who, if you're listening, you don't know who Joss Whedon is. Joss Whedon is known for a lot of his work on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think the first two Avengers films. I believe, because then the Russo brothers did the next few Avengers films. So noticeably, the Justice League film had his stamp. It had a lot of really weird, unnecessary humor. The visuals didn't even match what Snyder had done in the previous two films. It looked more like it was trying to be a Marvel movie in terms of they went away from the dark and muted colors, and it was more of like a bright movie. Some of the CGI was horrible, looked rushed, looked poor, it wasn't completed well. The other big controversy was Henry Cavill was filming Mission Impossible Fallout, and it had to contractually grow a mustache for that film. And Joss Whedon came in and they found, I don't know if you guys have been reading on this, but it's come out now. Joss Whedon reshot every single scene that Snyder had shot with Henry Cavill, when he had the mustache. So that's why all of his scenes has the CGI lip, because Snyder had already filmed all of his scenes. Joss Whedon came in and said, we're redoing all of them. So with that as context, the 2017 film, it's no wonder it was a mess. And then you find out that and this was reported early on, that Snyder originally wanted to do 2 films. He had enough material, as you can see now, to do 2 films. As we're going to talk about this film, I don't know where he would have split it in half. There's not quite a clean cut really to cut this in half. I don't know how he would have done a part 1 and 2 neatly, but supposedly that's originally what he wanted to do, because I remember it being announced as Justice League Part 1 and Part 2 in like 2015, 2016. So HBO, Warner Brothers came in, gave Zack Snyder, after a call from fans and the social media frenzy over the last few years, released the Snyder Cut. Ray Fisher, played Cyborg, came out with a huge, diatribe against Joss Whedon and the studio. Warner Brothers and Ray Fisher have actually severed ties because of some of the things that he said. But they ended up giving Zack Snyder $70 million. He went back, he even refilmed some scenes, and he completely re-edited it. New music, new scenes. It was even split up into acts with multiple chapters in it. So completely different film. So what are your guys' initial thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Well, just real quick on that. Zack Snyder still has not seen the theatrical cut.
I think he's completely removed himself from being associated with that film.
Yeah, he has. He hasn't seen it. He doesn't know anything about it. So like this take on it is completely from his mind. He knows nothing of what Joss Whedon did. So this,
which I think is an important thing. Yeah, it's important context too.
Yeah, very important.
And I think that's also why he put his name in the title. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I think is a bit of a middle finger to, to a lot of, haters, quote unquote.
Yep. Overall, this was pretty awesome. Just to state the obvious.
I loved it.
Completely different movie than the theatrical release. Completely different movie. I will say, I want to say like the last 3/4 of the movie, I want to say are like almost perfect. There's this first quarter that I think was kind of rough of this movie. I'm sure we'll get into more specifics as we go here, but that's what's deterring me from giving this like a really great score. But overall, I think it was pretty successful.
Daniel, what about you? Initial thoughts?
Yeah, I would go as far as to say it was a good movie. Being able to base it off of something that I really didn't like at all. A lot of improvements.
But I did not like the 2017 film.
Yeah, I am in the same boat as you. I thought this one, like Mikey said, there were still parts of it that I had issues with, and we'll get into more specifics later. But overall, yeah, I thought it was much better than the original one. Made a lot of changes, a lot of good changes, a lot of improvements and stuff. Yeah, it was a much better movie, more entertaining, that's for sure. I would definitely recommend it.
So I got, as I shared with you guys, are some of my talking points here. I got quite a few things I want to kind of break into specifics. But one of my complaints with Man of Steel was also a complaint I had with this film originally in 2017. And it was just messy. The structure, the script, the way it's executed just didn't flow to me. This film, the new version, 4 hours. And it just flowed from start to finish. I mean, I felt like the 4 hours, while it is long for me personally, I enjoyed it. And I never was bored. I never walked really, except maybe get a bathroom break. I never really was like, I got to take a break and walk away. I teach and I'm on spring break right now. And, I'm at home with a baby. So with 2 babies. So I had time to just kind of sit, in between feeding and just watch it for 4 hours. I think 2 days ago, I finally had 4 hours straight because I wanted to try and watch it straight through. And I was just amazed because like you said, I remember, I think I saw it with you, Daniel, at NCG when it came out in 2017, the original one.
I think I saw it with Daniel, actually.
Yeah.
Were you with us? Or did you guys go see it
twice?
I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
I know. I remember seeing a movie with both you guys, both you clowns. I remember seeing it in Kalamazoo with Mike.
Maybe you saw it twice then. I don't know. You maybe you weren't there when I went. I don't know. It was a long time. I just remember when I went and saw this movie in theaters, the 2017 Joss Whedon cut. I remember I was bored. At one point, I was just like in my chair, like, oh my God, when is this going to end? I couldn't stand. I mean, every scene, there was something I could not stand. The thing that I remember stood out the most to me that I mentioned already when I was kind of introducing this was the humor was so forced. I'm like this because I knew going into it that I knew that, you know, Snyder had walked away because of the family tragedy. It was announced in 2017 when this came out, and that Joss Whedon had come in to finish. And I'm like, it is so clear that Joss Whedon forced all this stuff in, and that's gone in this new cut. It's not there. Batman's weird, stupid quips and humor. I mean, there is some humor mostly associated with the Flash, and a few quips here and there, but it feels appropriate. It doesn't feel forced. It feels natural within the scene or the character. It doesn't take away from serious moments. And I remember that film, it felt so much like a Marvel movie, the 2017 one, like, you know,
a bad one though, a bad Marvel movie.
A bad Marvel movie.
Like Joss is the king of making camp work. I mean, the first Avengers movie is so campy, but it's so fun.
But it's set up that way from the very first Iron Man movie. It's all like set up that way. It
works out. It does not work out for Snyder's movies.
No, because his movies were never set up that way. They were far more serious.
Right.
And again, there is a little bit of, you know, there are some lighthearted moments and some funny, you know, one-liners in this movie, but they come at times that feel more appropriate and natural. They don't feel forced in. So kind of moving along here with a couple other things. What did you guys think about HBO? They even had like a PSA or a warning at the beginning of them keeping the IMAX format for home video. I've never seen IMAX, the original format for home video. They never do that. Typically, like, you know, Christopher Nolan shoots most of his films on IMAX, and you can tell the scenes that are in IMAX and the scenes that are on regular film. And the scenes that are in IMAX, you know, the top and bottom bars go away. I don't know how familiar you guys are with aspect ratio and, you know, format, but even when that happens, the top and bottom, people might not know, it's still cut off. There's still something missing on your TV at home. What they did here is the original, that 4:3 aspect ratio is the original format that's meant for an IMAX screen. What did you guys think about that?
I saw that. Actually, it took me like a half an hour in to even notice that the picture was like that. And then I noticed, and I was like, oh, God, like I have to change something on my TV. What's going on here? Reboot the Roku. I missed that PSA in the beginning.
Oh, you didn't see it? Yeah,
no, I didn't. I missed it. I was up doing something or something.
It's very brief. Yeah, there's just a big purple screen that said HBO, you know, sides with Zack Snyder, his original version, the original IMAX 4:3 aspect ratio or whatever.
Right. So then I Googled it. I was like, is this supposed to be like this? And yeah, the interweb told me, this is what Snyder wanted.
Yeah, and it just made me wish I had a bigger TV. I'm like, I wish I had a bigger TV.
We have our couch is like 10 feet away from our mantelpiece. We have like maybe a 55-inch TV or something. And I was just like, God damn it! I wish I was a little closer to the TV, or this TV was massive or something.
Well,
IMAX screen right now for sure.
Well, yeah, and I don't know again how familiar you guys are with it, but if you go online and look, you can see people have done like some, you know, re-imaging from this movie, what it would look like if they had adjusted it to your TV screen, and you would lose the top and bottom of the image, because what they do with those IMAX images to fit the wide television screen, it basically gets zoomed in, and then the top and bottom get cut off, and people don't know that, because an IMAX screen is really a square. It's just enormous. It's almost a perfect square, and people aren't aware of that. And so it's a tall image.
I appreciate them trying to preserve what Snyder's vision was with that. But just to release this solely for streaming on HBO Max.
There has been some rumors that they might eventually try to put it in IMAX. I don't know if they will, because I would love to see this in IMAX.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I don't know. Have you heard about the like black and white version of that?
I did. That he has a black and white version. Yeah.
I think that's supposed to drop in like a month or so, but I don't know if that's going to be the same aspect ratio or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'd check it out. There was Mad Max Fury Road. They did a similar thing where they had a black and white version of that movie. And it's like, I like the colors. I don't know. That's one of my favorite things about watching modern movies are nowadays you have colorists who they do the color grading for the film. And that's kind of like a big thing is, the rich image that pops off the screen. So I think you lose that a little bit, but
moral of the story, I don't think it did much for me on this current state. Like, I think it worked really well for The Lighthouse. It fit that tone and that feeling. You've seen The Lighthouse, right?
Oh yeah, I love it.
That movie's phenomenal.
See, but that's not IMAX
necessary for this.
So, but that film, and that's what I think people don't understand. If you were to compare those films side by side, in a similar image, you're going to get a lot taller image in Justice League because it's an IMAX camera, whereas the 4:3 aspect ratio for like a movie like The Lighthouse, that is not an IMAX camera. It's just a regular camera where they're shooting on 4:3 aspect ratio. And for that movie, the artistic choice of that is to make it feel like an old film, like you're in the 1800s and the claustrophobia. That's kind of the artistic choice here. Where with the IMAX camera, the original aspect ratio, you're getting the full image, whereas they squish it down to zoom it in on the screen, and then you get the top and bottom are cut off. So it's something that I would love to see in IMAX, and it is cool to be able to think and be like, wow. And I was, I don't know if you guys were aware of it, but I knew going in about this choice. So I was like focusing on, that full image, what am I getting that I might not have if they had zoomed in, which you kind of start to see some of these tall images, these scenes that's like, okay, I can see why he wants it like this, because you're getting so much more in every scene that you might not have if they had cut the bottom and the top off to fit it to home media. But so that is one major change, obviously, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. What did you guys think about like some of the new CGI improvements? Obviously, Steppenwolf looks completely different. They completely re-rendered his character. It doesn't even look like the same character. I think he looks a lot better.
Armor's completely different. His persona is completely different. Face is different. Better.
Body build is completely different. It's a new character completely.
Cyborg, I thought looked better.
Yeah.
The parademons I thought looked better. And then we could get into from there. Speaking of CGI characters, Darkseid was and Desaad, I don't think were even in the original one.
No, they didn't. I don't think they showed them once, did they?
No. They were mentioned. I think they might have been mentioned. They didn't show up.
Yeah, and I just love, and Mikey and I once again spoke just briefly about this, but just how terrifying Darkseid's character really was in this. Just the little glimpse you get to see of him and stuff, man, it's like it's pretty intimidating.
Well, and I was really impressed, with Steppenwolf, that they developed his motivations a little bit. I don't remember, caring about that villain.
No. Well, and they were just so unclear in the original theatrical release.
Yeah, they're
by the end, I had no clue what his goal coming to Earth was.
Or his motivation. Yeah, because you can see now they gutted so much information out of that movie. The mother boxes, I don't remember having a clue what the hell the mother boxes were for. This movie, you get it, you understand the motivations, the goals of all of these villains, and you even kind of empathize with Steppenwolf a little bit when you find out that he's basically been like, banished and is trying to, regain his
been ostracized.
So I don't remember caring about that villain
reclaim his worth for the almighty Darkseid,
which I thought was a cool aspect. And you could keep going. Another huge character that was completely gutted was Cyborg. Cyborg's kind of the heart and soul of this movie. He was like a nothing in the original theatrical cut. Ray Fisher, I thought, stole the show. I thought he was great. His whole arc and everything about his character, there was so much more added here. You understood him and his father and his family and kind of why he's so angry at the world, and you cared a lot more about him. He was so much more of a fleshed out character this time around, and you felt that with Ezra Miller as the Flash. They give you a lot more backstory for him, and in each one of these characters, I felt like they received some moments. Obviously Wonder Woman, she already had a solo film, and I'm sure that might have played into some of this. And the Aquaman film in canon is supposed to be after this movie, so and obviously those characters don't get as much, but keeping in mind that they have their solo films, whereas the Flash and Cyborg It's been rumored for years there's supposed to be solo films. Who knows if we'll ever get them, but
right.
I did appreciate that. And I felt like bringing Superman back was fleshed out and realized a little bit better. That felt rushed to me in the original theatrical cut. Here it was, this whole movie just breathes and flows so much better. Nothing feels rushed, nothing feels disjointed. And I even liked the chapters. I thought the kind of splitting it up into the 6 chapters and the epilogue was kind of cool. It made you feel like, and going back to the aspect ratio, it all kind of comes together to feel like you're reading a comic. You know, like you're literally got the chapters, the shape of the image is almost like a comic page. And, you know, you have these big grand visuals, and you just get to spend a lot of time with these characters. And I think it's a far better experience as a result.
I would agree, but going off of what you're saying about the chapters, though, and this is one interesting thing that I kind of thought about after finishing the movie, and even I guess during the movie, you know, kind of just analyzing and things. But how long was the movie again? Was it 4 hours?
4 hours, almost exactly. It was just under, yeah. When credits rolled, it was just under 4 hours.
So, splitting a 4 hour movie up into 6 chapters, and this is Snyder's cut.
7 if you count the epilogue.
7 if you count the epilogue, right? So it's like, would you think Snyder and, you know, Warner Brothers would have put forward this product to release in a theatrical version?
Absolutely not. And so that's the thing. That's something I'm very excited about. This is something I'm very excited about. And I've seen a lot of people, critics and, you know, just people in the film community on social media and online talking about this, is what is this going to create or stir up now? Or, you know, there's going to be some positives coming out of this because this has been so well received. Is this going to finally give, you know, creative independence to some of these artists to, you know, realize their full vision? It's clear Zack Snyder was not interfered with. It's clear because every decision here normally, like you just said, would never see the light of a day. This was not the movie we were ever going to get. While we would have definitely, if Zack Snyder had never had to step away, we would have definitely received a different film. And maybe he would have, you know, fought to get a 2-part Justice League, maybe. But what we got, we were never going to get this, which is kind of amazing that this happened.
He said that there's a ton of scenes he added in this that were never in his original version.
He reshot some scenes.
Well, yeah, reshot, but he also added things like he's like, I have this opportunity, I'm just going to go crazy.
Yeah, they gave him $70 million to redo everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that crazy Joker scene at the end, we'll
get to that because I do want to talk about that at the end here. Because
so many things that, like you said, would never have made it into even his theatrical cut.
No,
right?
He just basically like made up almost on the spot because he's like, I have this opportunity to be an artist
and do what I want.
He took it. He took all 4 hours,
which I love. Like you said, Daniel, I don't think you will probably ever get movies like this because even Avengers Endgame was more than a decade in the making, and that 3-hour runtime, I think the only reason they were allowed that 3-hour runtime was because they knew how much was depending on that final chapter in that movie, and they had spent $20 billions in 20 movies in over a decade, whereas this, they didn't have that context leading up to it, so he never would have gotten that. But I'm excited going forward for streaming. You're not going to get this in the theatrical experience. Unfortunately, it's just not realistic for movie theaters to show a 4-hour film. They're not going to make enough money because 4 hours taking up an auditorium for 4 hours is just not allow them a quick enough turnaround to make a lot of money. It's just not realistic for anybody. But for streaming services, what kind of precedent does this set? Which is what I'm excited about. People have, this has received really good reviews from audiences and critics. I don't know if you guys have kind of read some of the discourse online with this movie right now, but people are loving it. Critics are re-reviewing this far more positively than the original. People who didn't, audiences who didn't like the original are, it's a lot better received. Every, aggregate scoring site, it's way higher scores. I mean, everyone's really loving this. So I'm hoping this is going to set a precedence for streaming services to kind of give, a lot more artistic freedom. And you kind of already see that. I mean, Daniel, you and I went and saw The Irishman in theaters, but we only managed to see it at some little rinky-dink art house theater in Howell, Michigan, because Netflix, gave Martin Scorsese. I mean, that at the time that was Netflix, and I think it still is Netflix's most expensive film, and that was a 3.5-hour epic gangster movie that normally would never see the light of day from a normal studio. So, stuff like this just kind of gets me excited because I am always on the side of, the director, the artist. I want to, I want their vision. I don't want studio interference, which is why at this point, Marvel, that's a whole nother conversation, but Marvel, they have so much studio interference, with Kevin Feige, or however you say that producer's name, and Disney overall, they have an image and kind of a uniform thing they're going for. So those artists only get so much wiggle room with what they can do. I think James Gunn, who is about to do a DC film with the new Suicide Squad, he's about the only one with the Guardians of the Galaxy films who I feel like has gotten any true, from what I feel, vision of his own that kind of, stays in the Marvel formula, but feels a lot different than everything else.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to see what comes of this. Are you going to get a lot more, kind of interesting, whether they're long movies or just, movies where these artists, directors, writers get to do whatever the hell they want, get a lot of money, and the studio says, okay, do what you want to do.
Take it away.
I'm excited about that same aspect. I think that's the positive portion that's going to come from this, or is already coming from this. I think there is a little negativity, though. There's some pretty toxic fandom around the entire Snyderverse.
There's toxic fandom with any of these major,
with anything.
Major franchises. Star Wars, Marvel,
bitten like crazy right now after they finally got their Snyder cut. Now it's hashtag restore the Snyderverse. And
which we'll get into that in a little bit. We're going to talk about that at the end, because I was going to talk about the future of this, but I'm going to save that. But the other thing I'm seeing that I'm glad you brought up is I'm seeing people now trying to get David Ayer's original cut of Suicide Squad, which to
Warner Brothers just said a quick no.
Well, yeah, you already have James Gunn's new movie coming out, which I'm sure is going to be a lot better, because I like David Ayer, but he's made he followed that movie up with Bright, that terrible Netflix movie with Will Smith.
He's had 3 pretty bad stinkers in the last couple of years.
Which is weird, because he did some really good movies before that.
Oh, it's phenomenal. He did Training Day. It's like, how do you go from that?
He did End of Watch. I think he did Fury, the war movie Fury.
Yep.
He did some good stuff. But anyway.
Sorry.
No, go ahead if you had something else.
I was just gonna say, I think his most recent one I've heard is like his worst movie he's ever made with Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, what was it?
Oh, I forget what it's called, but Shia LaBeouf is like the lone white guy in this like Spanish Mexican mafia or something.
Oh, I guess I haven't even heard of it.
I hope I didn't even. I probably butchered what the heck this movie's even about, but I just
go look into it later.
Terrible, absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you though that there is. I think that you bring up an interesting point, because I wonder, what does this encourage or enable from fandom? While I think it's great for Zack Snyder that, the tragedy that he had to endure, that he was allowed, 3 years later to come back and do this, and was given the money and freedom to do it, I think is incredible. But what is the fallout in terms of, these incels online in their mom's basement who are, like you said, who spend their whole day online saying nasty things to people.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, I try to ignore those morons, but what are you going to do?
Right.
Another thing I wanted to mention is, what did you guys think about the R rating? So this was rated R, and the Batman vs Superman Ultimate Edition was also rated R.
Yep.
This one, they dropped some F-bombs. They actually had a few F-bombs. There's a very sexually explicit joke from the Joker at the end in the epilogue, which we can get into the epilogue in a little bit here. There is some improved gore, which I was really surprised to see. To be honest, I kind of liked the gore. I've always hated these, the Marvel movies I'm going to keep going back to, because they always go for the family friendly stuff. So you don't really, deaths or fights or, people, being injured, scenes where in the Marvel movies that should result in blood or gore never does, because they're not going to show that in those movies, because they have a certain standard. But I kind of liked the realism here, because a Steppenwolf has a giant axe. Yeah, he's going to cut people in half with it. They're going to bleed. There's going to be gore. And I appreciated that it wasn't really over the top. It wasn't excessive. It wasn't like some gory horror fest or anything like that. It just seemed more realistic. For some of these kills and some of these action sequences, you would see some gore, heads getting cut off. It to me gave the movie a little bit more like, it was a little bit more adult themed. I kind of liked it. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I kind of forgot it was R-rated for most of the time
And
until they decided to drop a random F-bomb.
Yeah.
Well, and I think even the cursing, because there is a bit of cursing, but it's not like in your face. Like they're not dropping F-bombs every scene. Like if they had done that, I'd be like, okay, come on. Like when they use some of the curse words, it seems natural. Like when Cyborg goes, I think he says "fuck the world" or whatever. Like some of the stuff like that, I think it feels natural in the moment. It's emotionally justified in some of the scenes.
I can see that. I think maybe it wasn't
forced.
I think maybe it wasn't justified in the end credits scene. I feel like that one was like a little bit forced, the F-bomb. But other than that,
with Batman, you're saying
Joker,
with the Joker, yeah.
Oh, you're talking about his reach around joke.
Yeah, I mean, then he drops an F-bomb too. He's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you" or something. Joker.
I don't know. I didn't mind it. I kind of liked the. I don't know. I kind of liked that it just doesn't care.
Yeah,
it's just not trying to be family friendly. I kind of like.
There's kind of like a blurred line nowadays between like violence of PG-13 and R-rated movies. And I felt like with this, like I really didn't notice that it was R-rated violence.
Not at
all.
It's
not. It's like, not overstated. It's not over the top.
Then when a swear word F-bomb would come up or something, or the reach around joke is just like, I don't know if I needed that. Like this could have gotten away with being hard PG-13 maybe, and I don't know. Like I said, it's a very blurred line between the two ratings these days. Like I think I want to say almost the same amount of violence in some later Marvel movies where things are a little bit less fluffy, maybe a little bit less gore, but
yeah, they don't have. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of really many scenes in the MCU that have much blood or gore outside of maybe a little bit. It's not nothing compared to what you see in this movie. But again, what you see in this movie is really not that over the top or anything. It's pretty understated, I think.
I don't know, Daniel, what did you think of that?
Honestly, I'm in the same boat as you, Mikey. I really didn't notice this was an R-rated movie until they did drop a few of those F-bombs and stuff. But like you said, there is a blurred line nowadays between the violence between PG-13 and R, and I thought it wasn't R violence by any means. I thought it kind of like fit that, maybe more violent PG-13. But like you said, I think I've seen movies that are more violent than this that have been PG-13 and stuff. But as far as like, there's so many good movies I go back to, like growing up and watching them. The CGI was much better in this movie compared to the first one. But when it comes to CGI versus actual, live action characters and costumes and things of that nature, the original like Lord of the Rings, and this is something I always go back to, like how good those movies are with such limited CGI. And then you compare those to The Hobbit, and it's just like,
I'm glad you brought that up.
And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but
no, I think it's very relevant to one of my criticisms of the movie. I'll let you finish, but I'm glad you brought it up.
No, I'm just like, because I look at how amazing those movies are in the shots, and there's some CGI in here, but it's just the costumes and the effort they went to, very similar to the original Jurassic Park movies, how real it makes it seem with the animatronics and everything. I mean, if you go to YouTube and look up how they made these, I think we've all watched them together at some point, but I mean, it's if you were to see one of these things in person, it's terrifying. It really is. Like being able to see an actual Tyrannosaurus Rex or someone walking towards you that looks like a Velociraptor, it's terrifying. And just knowing the creativity, that went to making those costumes, versus, and I'm not saying, the developers and the people that are dealing with the CGI aren't talented, but it just takes it to a different level when you can create something in person like that. But like the gore and stuff, to me, obviously, whether it's PG-13 or R, it is violence, but it's not to the same level of something that they're without the CGI, I guess, if that makes sense.
I am always a supporter and a fan and a proponent of things in frame, in the shot, right? Actual tangible things, models, props, real stunts, real locations, opposed to green screen and post-production CGI work. I agree with you. Lord of the Rings, the reason it's going to stand the test of time is because they used models, they used props, they used real locations, they used makeup and costumes. They didn't CGI everything. Biggest criticism with all of these superhero blockbuster movies is, again, they do not make the decision to film a lot of things on location. it's a lot of sound stages and green screen and CGI that's done in post-production, which is noticeable. You're always going to be able to tell if something's real, whether it's a model or a prop, or it is a real, live set, something they built. You're always going to be able to tell if something's tangible, if it's if it's being filmed on camera opposed to being made with a computer in post-production. You're always going to know. Your eyes can just tell the difference. No matter how advanced technology becomes, no matter how good the CGI is, you're always going to be able to tell the difference between something real and not. So that is one of my really only gripes with this movie, is the CGI after a while just becomes a little bit numbing. It's just like, okay, it's like everything's animated, but
again, and this is kind of my point at the beginning, to portray
it's well done, but there's just a lot of it.
Agreed. And that's my point. It's well done. I still enjoy it, but to portray these characters, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, all these characters, it's going to take CGI, because obviously you can't replicate
Batman, it is possible because Christopher Nolan did it. There's very little CGI in his movies.
When you're including Batman with these other characters, what I'm saying, though.
With the other characters, though, I don't know how would you show Superman flying around the world and doing the things he does without CGI.
But that's one thing, and I know like how the choppiness of Man of Steel. That's one thing about Man of Steel, though. The CGI, I think the CGI is phenomenal. It's unbelievable in Man of Steel. I think it looks incredible. Just like him flying, some of the other things. I don't know about your guys' aspects.
I think it looks great. I think the computer generated imagery in all three of these movies that we've talked about is great. And the new stuff done in this is great too.
Mikey, what are your thoughts?
I was gonna say I'll agree to that about Man of Steel and some of these having really good CGI, but then there's also some really like jarring CGI. Like I remember watching special features on Man of Steel and finding out that Zod's like outfit, his whole outfit he wears in the whole movie, the whole thing is CGI.
It's noticeable. I noticed it this time around looking at it. You could tell he looked like he was wearing a green jumpsuit. I could kind of tell, because at this point you can pick it out, because I've seen so many behind the scenes from like Marvel now of like Vision is literally covered in green stuff. There's very little, his face is makeup, but everything else is like green. So like I've started to have an eye for it. You can kind of pick it out after a while if you're looking for it.
Yeah. But pertaining to Justice League, I agree with you a little bit on that, Daniel. Like there's certain scenes where Batman is randomly CGI'd. Like he'll be doing like this roll or something and then shooting. Like I don't know why that was necessary. It's like they decided this whole scene is going to be CGI. We'll worry about Batman later. We don't need to film this. We'll just CGI it, because we're CGIing everything else. And I think this mostly pertains to like that last half an hour of the movie. I feel like that was the most jam-packed with CGI. That was a little. I don't want to say it was choppy. It was a little choppy.
If you want to get in the epilogue, we can do it, because that was my next talking point, was to kind of get into the epilogue and the final 20 to 30 minutes. So we can get into that since you're bringing it up. What do you guys think? I saw someone compare the epilogue of this to like Return of the King, how it just keeps going and going and going. Like, is this the end? No, wait.
Is this movie ended 4 different times?
That's how you feel with Return of the King. Like, is it ended now?
Yes. Yep. I agree.
But Return of the King, I feel like it is necessary with this movie. I liked the epilogue, but this is where it got a little choppy. I'm like, this feels like another movie.
Yeah, I think those were just Zack Snyder's like, ooh, I have this chance. I'm just gonna throw some stuff in,
And maybe I'll get to go back to doing the Snyderverse. If I tease all of this stuff, people are like, oh my God, I love this. Oh my God, I love this. Like, are we gonna get this? Or they're just gonna, go online and spam Warner Brothers for the Snyderverse, restore the Snyderverse. I liked a lot of it. Well, again, while it is a little tacked on and a little choppy, I did like a lot of the stuff. I loved that general ended up being the Martian Hunter. I thought that was kind of a cool addition.
It's a little problematic though for like Man of Steel. He's just this general kind of like letting the world die, I guess, hoping Superman's gonna save.
And I don't know much about that character from the comics, so I don't know if there is legitimate context to that, or if
he's Superman tier powerful. Like he's good.
or if it's more of a retcon situation where he's like, people won't notice, and it's just like Star Wars, with the later films, it's just, we're going to squeeze this in. We didn't plan this ahead of time, but we're going to make it seem like it was always there.
Right. That's fair.
I hated Jared Leto's Joker in Suicide Squad. I actually thought he was pretty good in this epilogue. I actually liked his scene in this. I was like, Suicide Squad. Okay. And I was like, thank you. for covering up the stupid tattoos. Like they actually made him look like the tattoo thing was so stupid. It was so gimmicky. It was so dumb. I'm like, it's like a Hot Topic version of the Joker.
What was the tattoo on his forehead? It was like
damaged.
Yeah. Thank you. I needed that.
So stupid. So I was genuinely impressed. And again, is it direction? Is Zack Snyder doing a better job than David Ayer did directing Jared Leto? I don't know. And I'm pretty sure most of the epilogue was what he reshot, because he refilmed scenes for this movie. And I think those scenes were mostly what he reshot. There was some stuff, I think, during the rest of the film, but a lot of the epilogue, I think, was stuff that he reshot within the last couple of years.
So Vincent, going off what you're saying about the Joker, and I have a question, because, and again, this is going back to the Dark Knight trilogy. I don't want to keep, beating a dead horse, but there's so many aspects about those movies that are just so good. And obviously, Snyder and these other directors want to go in different directions with these characters, and understandably they want to have their own unique identities. But like, it's all the same company. What's wrong with copying some of those things from that Joker and keeping it the same? Because I mean, Heath Ledger's performance, everyone, it's unbelievable. I mean, his performance as the Joker is so good. Why don't you keep some of those things that people like, versus like you said, the tattoos thing, and just his whole demeanor, and just it's very silly.
I think we saw tidbits of that in Phoenix's Joker a little bit, but
I really like that movie too.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Yes, I completely agree. Yep.
Being an avid comic book reader, the Joker is everywhere all the time, every comic book, every month. And people are a little tired of it. I'm tired of seeing him in comic books. So to put him on the screen, I think people are just trying to come up with new, different takes on the character. He's everywhere right now, and he's popular for sure. But people are just trying to get the newest, hippest take on the Joker to see what it'll take.
Well, and
also, there's a little respect to Jared Leto's, or not Jared Leto,
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger's Joker, like paying homage to him, but also like that was his thing. He was perfect at it. He died for that role. We're gonna do our own thing because that's that, and we're gonna leave that be that for all of movie history. So I don't know. That's, I guess, maybe how I feel about it. But
and I think the three most iconic Jokers: Mark Hamill voicing in the animated series and the video games, Heath Ledger, and then Jack Nicholson. From the original 89 Batman. Those are probably the three most iconic. You could probably list a few more of some of the voice actors who've done some of the different animated series and video game roles, but those are the three that I feel like everyone's always trying to chase. Be the next Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, or Mark Hamill. Who's gonna have that next great performance? And each one of them is their own distinct thing.
They're so different.
They do their own. They have their own voice. They have their own laugh. They have their own body language. The way that they kind of carry each other. Obviously, with Mark Hamill's being animated, the animators kind of bring a different style to that version, physically. But they all do their own thing. And so like, I appreciate that they were trying to do their own thing with this version of the Joker. For me, I just thought it was stupid what they were trying to do. It just seemed like, not to slander Generation Z, but it just seemed like this edgy, angsty teen Hot Topic, 21st century social media version of the Joker. And it just was so cringy. I just thought it was super cringy.
I can't get behind that laugh either. It's too.
And I appreciate him trying to do his own laugh, do his own thing, but for me, it doesn't work. Some people I know said they like it. There are some people, whether they're lying to themselves and they just refuse to admit it's terrible, or they genuinely like it. I know that some people have, praised the Joker, his version, not a lot, but some people have. But again, this epilogue version of it, I was like, okay. And Jared Leto's a great actor. He's phenomenal. Great. He's great in American Psycho. He's great in Dallas Buyers Club. He's great.
Requiem for a Dream.
He's done a lot of great roles. He's a great actor. So
Mr. Nobody. Have you ever seen Mr. Nobody?
I started that movie years ago. It was on Netflix. And I never got around to finish it. I need to go back and watch it.
Super good, underrated movie. But anyways,
but he has a lot of great performances in him. So I don't know what was going on in terms of in his head and his vision of this, and David Ayer, what was going on there, that this is the Joker that we got. But again, it has elements of that from the Suicide Squad, and it kind of removes all the stuff that I disliked about it. I thought it was pretty good. I'm like, okay, can we get this version of Jared Leto's Joker going forward? Because I know they've already said Joaquin Phoenix and Joker, that movie, they're trying to create a new division of the universe where there's standalone dark films. It's like dark DC or something, which I think is cool to kind of approach some standalone movies, because I do get so tired of all of these films feeling like setup or chapters in a universe instead of being their own thing, their own individual movie. So I am kind of excited to see what they do with, you know, that Joker. If they just leave it alone, I would be happy if they just left that Joaquin Phoenix was just a one-off thing, leave it alone. It's its own little,
I would agree.
Movie. It'd be kind of cool. Just leave it be. And then maybe do something, you know, another individual, you know, movie, you know, but I don't know. I'll be curious to see what they do going forward. Anything else you guys have thoughts on the epilogue, or, you know, kind of what we've been talking about here?
Mikey, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, before we kind of get to the end here, I did want to mention that one of my favorite parts of this whole movie was the lore that they built in, like all of the ancient.
I know there wasn't any of that in the original one.
None of it, absolutely none of it.
Very minimal, very minimal.
That I was like on the edge of my seat, like, this is crazy. This is like every comic book fan's dream right now, watching that scene where they showed, you know, it's like the ancient battle against Darkseid.
The Atlanteans and the Titans.
Yeah, the Atlanteans are there. The Greek gods are there. There's a couple Green Lanterns flying around.
That's cool.
And, you know, men are there also fighting.
Zeus is there with
the Amazons.
Ares was there. They actually had the actor from Wonder Woman playing Ares.
That was so cool. I know. I love that scene.
That scene was just crazy. I did think it was funny though, like after we got the mother boxes or whatever, the Atlanteans like make this impenetrable box. The Amazons.
I know where you're going with this.
And then men are like, we bury box.
I know. I saw that. I know. I was literally, I laughed out loud and like said that to I think I either in my head or out loud in my basement, I was watching this. I'm like, that is so great that the men just buried it in the woods.
Classic.
I know. I thought that was great. That is a great moment.
Yeah.
How about you, Daniel? Any other thoughts here before I kind of, there's a couple more things, then we can wrap things up.
As far as like the epilogue or
just anything in general?
No, we can move on. Good.
So there's just two more things I want to talk about here before we kind of wrap things up, because we are just over an hour now. I don't want to keep you guys too long on a Friday night. What do you
got
guys
parties to go to, man?
Yeah, man, it's crazy Friday night. I got babies to get to here. I know I gotta hurry up and wrap up, because I don't know if you could hear, baby was crying at one point. What do you guys think about the future for this going forward? Any thoughts, hopes, you know, in terms of what you might want or what you think might happen for the future of the DC universe, whether it's something fallout from this movie or just in general? And I know they have some things that are announced, but this movie is very fresh. It just came out. There's a lot of love, you know, in the community, the film community and the comic book community and the DC community with this movie right now. So I'm wondering if it's going to, the powers that be with DC and Warner Brothers, are they going to start going, maybe we need to go back to the Snyderverse? I'm wondering what's going to happen. What do you guys think?
I kind of hope they don't go back to the Snyderverse personally. I think this was great, everything they did with this, but I think it would be better off like put into comic book form. They've been doing that actually a lot with a lot of things, like the unused script for Alien 3. They produced a comic of that. The original Star Wars script, they made a whole comic book of that. I feel like it would live on better in something like that. I think, me personally, I'm ready to kind of move past the Snyderverse and the Snyder Cut. We've been hearing about it from these people for 4 years now. They finally got their movie, and I loved it. I'm not gonna lie.
Enjoyed it. Yeah, I really liked it a lot.
A bit, but
and I think one of the reasons, I don't know about you guys, but one of the reasons I liked it so much is because my expectations were so low.
Yeah,
I mean, I rolled my eyes and scoffed for years at that stupid hashtag, you know, release the Snyder Cut. I thought it was like so stupid. I'm like, what? And then you do start to feel for the guy when you read some of the production things, what happened. You're like, okay, but really, is there really a masterpiece in here? And I don't like throwing the word masterpiece around, but I think you got just about the very best movie you could possibly get out of this. I mean, to me, it's as close as he could get to making a masterpiece, his own masterpiece. I mean, I think it's night and day. I mean, it's unbelievable.
For sure. I unfortunately, I think the whole like concept of it was kind of doomed from the beginning, just trying to be different from Marvel and not developing any characters before they made this.
Yeah,
So like
that's a big criticism from me too.
Yeah, just the mere fact that this is 4 hours long is pretty silly because of that whole thing.
There's no setup before this movie. Yeah.
No.
No.
So like
So he has to.
What he did with that was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Putting story to Cyborg's character, Flash's character, all the other characters, Aquaman. But that should have never had to happen.
They should have had their own movies going into this, and they can have their own tone and style. They don't have to match the visuals and the tone and the style, and they don't have to have the humor like you know Marvel does. But again, I do think I'm all about character. I mean, if a movie doesn't have great characters and emotion, and I can't be emotionally invested, then that's why I didn't like Justice League. I didn't really care about anything happening. This movie, you get to spend so much time with these characters, and they're developed so much better that by the end you're on the edge of your seat. You're so much more invested in the final half of this movie.
Definitely. But as far as like moving forward in the future of the DC universe or DC extended universe, they have a humongous slate of things that they're working on.
Yeah, I've kind of peeked online some of the things they've announced.
Like over 20 different things. I don't know if you saw, but yesterday they actually just announced they canceled 2 movies.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, this was supposed to be a huge movie. It's basically like their response to Marvel's Eternals. It's called The New Gods.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. No,
yeah, the scope is huge. It's a Jack Kirby, original thing. He made the Eternals also for Marvel. But anyways, they canceled that, and they canceled the Trench movie, which is the spinoff of Aquaman.
I think I remember hearing about it.
I'm kind of happy they canceled that one. That was pretty bizarre to ever
make a movie about it,
greenlight it. Yeah. But anyways, what I was gonna try to get at was future of the DC universe. Like, I think they really need to learn from this, the successes of this, and they really need to learn from the failures of Wonder Woman 2.
That's the only one. So that's what I want to get into next, was just kind of your guys' thoughts on the whole thing. But yeah, I agree with you. I would love to see them do more of this dark universe that they're calling it, with the individual standalone films R-rated, whether it's super, Joker's pretty violent and very much not a kid's movie. So I'd be curious to see if they keep doing that. Daniel, what about you? Any wishes with this going forward? Thoughts, opinions with the universe?
I think Zack Snyder's kind of run his course in the whole DC realm of things. He's
kind of even said that I think he's burned out, that he did this, and I think he personally is going to move away from it.
Yeah, and I would think so too. And Mike and I touched on the fact that you only get so many opportunities to kind of prove yourself. And Man of Steel was good, and me and Mike really enjoyed it. You thought it was good at best,
but it's still underperformed.
Still underperformed.
I think it could be better.
Batman versus Superman definitely underperformed. And they keep coming out with all these extended versions with the Snyder cuts, and it's like, man, those aren't the theatrical releases. You got to do all the box office, you got to please the fans and stuff like that. And then now, this whole, and obviously it's unfortunate what happened, the tragedy with his daughter and such, but you only get so many opportunities to put your product out there for people to like it, and it hasn't been getting much praise. A lot of people, have been very critical of it and stuff. So I think it is time to move on. But yeah, going forward, I would like to see, this cast of characters continue to, band together. And, some of these movies, like Mikey said, there's a whole list of movies coming out. I'm not aware of exactly what movies are, but
I know. Well, that's the thing I mentioned earlier, that I kind of, scoffed and rolled my eyes at this whole thing going into it. But do you have the list of all of them?
Yeah.
And I going into this, I've completely lost interest. I only went and saw Joker because to me, that was just, that character study was far more interesting to me. But I really hadn't planned on seeing many of the DC movies going forward. No. And we can kind of get into our overall thoughts on the universe to wrap things up here, unless you guys have any other parting thoughts.
No, Mikey, can you kind of read off, some of the stuff you have there? Some of those other, movies or other things that may be coming out regarding DC?
Yeah, I haven't paid attention to it.
So first off, we have Suicide Squad from James Gunn.
I am excited about that just because of James Gunn. I like James Gunn.
That Red Band trailer that just came out looked pretty good.
Yeah.
We got Black Adam, got a Green Lantern Corps show, Wonder Woman 3, A new Superman movie written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
Mm-mm.
He's an acclaimed author. He's also written a lot of Black Panther comic books.
Oh, okay.
So I guess they're going to try to introduce an African-American Superman at some point. I'm not sure if it's going to be its own thing in the Dark Universe or if they're going to like have him transition in.
That sounds like something unique and different. I would be interested.
I'm excited about that. We have a Flash film with Ezra Miller, which is a little troubling. That character has a lot of... Did you see the video of that guy by chance?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with him because he wasn't he beating some girl and he was drunk or I saw that video.
He like choked her and then slammed her to the ground. And
yeah,
then,
I saw that. It's really messed up.
So he hasn't put a statement out. It's been a year now.
It was a while ago, yeah.
Or Warner Brothers. No one has made any statement. They're just like trying to bury it. And anyway, so he's going to star in a movie. This
apparently, yeah.
Potential, woman beater. You got 3 Batman movies, Aquaman 2.
I am excited about Robert Pattinson's The Batman because
Robert Pattinson
and Robert Pattinson's The Batman because is it Matt Reeves who did the Planet of the Apes movies, which the new Apes trilogy was amazing. So I'm excited to see what Matt Reeves does with that Batman movie.
Very excited.
And I love Robert Pattinson. I think people who talk shit about him have never seen any of the movies he's done since the Twilight films, and they're just completely ignorant to the roles that he has landed. Yeah. He's been brilliant in so many great indie films lately. So I'm excited to see what he does.
He's totally bloomed after Twilight. He's been in like 5 A24 films that were just incredible.
Great in all of them, yeah.
Yeah, phenomenal. Sorry, almost done with the list. We got Shazam 2. We have a Peacemaker show, spinoff of Suicide Squad. We have a Black Hawk movie, which is about World War II ace pilots, supposedly being directed by Steven Spielberg.
Ooh.
We have Plastic Man, which is going to have a female lead. We have Justice League Dark TV show made by J.J. Abrams. We have a Static Shock movie. Do you guys remember Static Shock?
I loved that show on Kids WB when I was a kid. My brother and I both watched that on Saturday mornings.
Yep. We have a new Constantine series, and all these series, they're going to be on HBO Max. An Hour Man movie. He's a character from the Justice League of America, or Justice Society of America, excuse me. A Supergirl movie, not related to the show. A Blue Beetle movie, and then lastly, a Zatanna movie. Yeah. So,
quite the slate.
Oh, interesting.
Got some stuff.
Well, before we wrap things up here, because again, I know we're going a little bit longer than what I originally said, but that's okay. We've had great conversation here. We'll kind of wrap things up here. If you guys just want to, we can go Mikey and then Daniel, and then I'll wrap it up. Your overall either rankings or just thoughts on the DCEU, the extended universe, as it stands now.
Daniel, why don't you go first? I have them ranked on my app, so I got to pull that up.
I got mine pulled up right here.
Oh geez, you want me to rank them all in order, or just like?
Oh, you don't have to. You can just give your overall thoughts. Mikey and I both use Letterboxd, so like I make lists on Letterboxd with my with this stuff.
So I will say of my favorite movie is Man of Steel so far. Kind of like I've discussed before of the DC extended universe. Man of Steel would be my favorite. I would say probably this one is next. This one was pretty good, I thought. Wonder Woman, the original Wonder Woman, I thought was fairly good. And I know a lot of people, have talked about how fun the Aquaman movie was, and I've seen it, and it is
super
fun,
campy.
It is very, it is
super campy,
very campy. But the Suicide Squad movie just absolutely awful. It's just like it's kind of like this whole, it's the same theme over and over again. You know how we kind of like talked about the Batman versus Superman, how there was a lot of potential, but just a lot of letdown. I feel like it's the same way with all these movies, man. Like the Suicide Squad cast, you look at the cast, you think it'd be, phenomenal, come together well and everything, but just a huge letdown. Even looking at the trailers leading up to that movie, they just it looked wild, it looked fun, it looked just very entertaining, and just a huge letdown. So honestly, a lot of those movies besides those three, just kind of disappointing for me, honestly. But I would honestly, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe I'd give this movie, I would definitely recommend to see it, recommend watching it if you're interested, but I would give it maybe, 7 out of 10, 7 out of 10, maybe. In my opinion, there's no such thing, and nothing is really perfect. So even the Dark Knight trilogy, 9.5 out of 10, there's nothing's perfect in my opinion. There's got to be room for flaw and error and stuff. But I would give this one about a 7 out of 10, I'd say.
How about you, Mikey?
All right, so I do have Man of Steel as number 1 as well. I have Aquaman as number 2. Campiest thing ever.
It knows exactly. If you haven't seen it, Daniel, it knows what it is. And James
I know
Wan,
exactly.
who did Saw and the Conjuring movies, did it.
Yeah.
It's so goofy, and like the glimpses of Aquaman you see in this Justice League movie where he's like, "Oh yeah, awesome," and he's doing all these like punchy lines. That's like it's a whole movie of that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The CGI and like the animals with like lasers on their head, it's insane. It's
Octopus,
so over the top.
Octopus is playing the drums in the movie. It's like
it's over the
so
top.
ridiculous.
It's really goofy. Yeah.
So I have Wonder Woman as number 3. I have the Snyder Cut as number 4. Birds of Prey as 5. Shazam as 6. The original Justice League theatrical release as 7. Yeah, I think it's better than Wonder Woman 2. I thought that movie was just awful. So
that's the only one I haven't seen. I'll get to that.
Oh, it's so bad. Wonder Woman 2 is 8. Batman vs Superman is 9. Suicide Squad is 10.
Damn, you really don't like Batman vs Superman.
I love that we're all different, man.
We're all different here. So my number 1 is this one, Zack Snyder's Justice League. For me, it's like an 8.5 or 9 out of 10 because for me, I rate movies on like, for me, it's rewatchability and is it as great as it can be for what it's trying to be? Like, is this as perfect as it can be for what it is? You know, if I rate this a 10 out of 10, I'm not saying that it's a 10 out of 10 that's better than like, you know, Taxi Driver or Goodfellas. I would say it's like a 10 out of 10 for what it is. So for me, it's like an 8.5 or a 9 for being this grand epic comic book movie. I think it's pretty great. Batman vs Superman is my number 2. I think that will end up changing. I don't know. For some reason that just sticks in my heart. I don't know. I have nostalgia.
There's a lot of good in that movie.
Martha.
I am very critical of it, and I openly acknowledge that it definitely is not a great movie, but for some reason I like a lot about it.
I still think that's the greatest Batman costume we'll ever see in any movie ever.
But that's the thing, like you said, it is like a roller coaster. As much great things, there's equally horrible things.
Oh yeah.
My number 3 is Shazam. I loved Shazam. I thought that was great. That felt like a Sam Raimi movie, super dark and twisted. My number 4 is Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey I originally wasn't going to see. I just rented it out of the blue. I was like, I'll check it out. And I actually really liked Birds of Prey. I thought it was a complete turnaround from Suicide Squad. I felt like it was a response to how horrible Suicide Squad was. Birds of Prey I thought was good. Then I got Man of Steel. Then I'm Aquaman. And honestly, those 1 through 6, I enjoy. I really like all of those. My last 3, I don't like. I don't like Wonder Woman. I watched it for the first time this last year. I thought it was super mediocre. I think part of it was I had high expectations for it going in because people have told me, sorry, Daniel, but including you, people have told me for years that it's so great and I got to watch it. And so like I had these high expectations, how great it was going to be. I just didn't think it was that good. I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't think it was good. I just thought it was I was super meh on it. I don't know. I don't know if I'll revisit it. I probably won't because now the only one I haven't seen, then I have the original Justice League and Suicide Squad. I hate Suicide Squad. I will never watch that movie again. My brother and I saw it. We almost walked out. We were so angry watching that movie.
I remember that after you two saw it. I remember you said you guys.
We wanted to walk out. John looked at me at one point and goes, "Should we leave?" And I'm like, let's just finish it.
You got to stick it out.
On principle, I'm like, let's just see the whole thing because then I feel like I can justify my opinions and speak about it if I sat through the whole thing. The only one I haven't seen is the new Wonder Woman. I haven't seen the new one. I've heard it so bad that I haven't.
Well, apparently it's going to be worse than the original Wonder Woman for you.
Yeah, I didn't like the original one, so I don't think I'm going to like the new one either.
No.
My wife and I just tried to do a DCEU marathon a couple months ago. Like in
boy.
We stopped at Suicide Squad, so we didn't get too far.
That's hilarious,
dude. And that's the unfortunate thing too, is none of the movies they don't flow together, you know. And that's one thing about the Marvel universe that they do it so well. They interconnect everything and stuff, and it's almost like one giant movie, you know, versus the DC. But again, they going for different things and stuff. But yeah, you can't do that with the DC.
No,
I was like, we got to power through this, and then we just both kind of realized we're like, let's just watch a good movie. Let's watch a movie that we both like. Why are we doing
Batman Begins? Let's just put it in.
I know that's why I told you guys, I just watched Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman because that's the true story you need going into this. I wasn't going to bother with the other ones, but so those are just the two I watched. Well, all right, guys, I appreciate your time. I know we've been on like an hour and a half at this point, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. So Daniel, Mikey, thanks for joining me. I'll be back with another episode very soon. Hope you enjoyed listening and following along as we talked about Zack Snyder's Justice League and the DC universe. Until next time, I'm Vince with guests Daniel Middleton, Mikey Bair, and on the Film Nerd Podcast, and go watch some movies.